Right, as the chaotic and often violent pro-Hamas demonstrations embroil campuses throughout the country, many people removed from student life have been forced to ask, what is going on these university campuses? What is behind this chaos and this confusion? I mean, it's more than just political. There's something here. Joining me now to help us understand this, Dr. Jennifer Bauwens, the director of the Center for Family Studies here at the Family Research Council. Dr. Bauwens has taught psychological trauma and research methods in several graduate programs, including Rutgers University and Princeton Seminary. She's been at these Ivy League schools. Dr. Bauwens, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
You also have a PhD. Your PhD is from New York University, which was rocked by demonstrations this week. So this is familiar terrain for you. What's going on?
Well, when I was at NYU, we were starting to see some of the seeds of the anti-Semitism. And you wouldn't think in a city with so many Jewish people producing such great work, and a lot of academic colleagues are Jewish. We worked with Israeli universities.
By the way, a lot of your research had to do with trauma, incorporated a lot of what's happened in Israel.
That's right. And the interesting thing is that we were boycotting Jewish professors. We were talking about boycotting Jewish professors back in, I want to say it was around 2010. And you just wouldn't think that with so many Jewish faculty at NYU and Columbia and all of the other schools that we're talking about, that they're protesting their own people. And so you have to wonder what on earth is going on. And I think there are a couple factors here. There is certainly, the context that the Marxist kind of context that we've been dealing with, where you have the oppressed and the oppressor. And that has given way. It, I think, has really filled the vacuum of a spiritual void, right? Because in the academy, Christianity has kind of fallen by the wayside. A lot of our textbooks talk about how backwards Christians are. It's not pro-Christian. Let's just say that.
Right. So that's been filled by this Marxist ideology?
Yes. And so you can see it applies in a lot of different contexts. It applies to the transgender issue that we often talk about on the program, but it also applies to this context where those who have a biblical basis are considered to be the oppressor. And that's true for Christians, it's true for Jews, but right now we're really seeing this, flaring with the Jewish people.
Should we be seeing what's happening on these college and university campuses as a warning? Yes.
We should see this as a warning because this is not new. What we're seeing is more fruit. And we're seeing, you have to think about the student body. I talked to a friend of mine, a former colleague who is a professor, and we said back in 2014, 2015, have you noticed that the student body seems to be less mature than the years before? And we both agreed that was the case. Well, why is that the case? A lot of it has to do with emotional development, the kind of brokenness that kids are coming from, and all of those things. They need to be filled somehow. And so you have professors who have a certain ideological bent, many from the 60s. They didn't get saved in the Jesus People movement, right? And so they have a certain ideology that they're bringing to the table, and they're shepherding young, vulnerable minds to think a certain way. And they're all the more vulnerable because of all of the emotional baggage that they're walking in.
So, Dr. Bauwens, if I'm hearing you correctly, legislation like we were just talking about, while it's needed, is not the solution. It may put a Band-Aid on the situation, may contain it, right, but it's not going to fix it because this is spiritual in its nature, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, when I look at those protesters, I want to weep because I see people who are sheep without shepherds. And I weep for the Jewish people, too, the fact that they're having to deal with this kind of I can't imagine going to campus every day wondering, is some random person going to harm me just because of who I am, who I've been created to be?
When you think of the Marxist ideology of the oppressed and the oppressor, and you look at Israel, or let's say the Jewish people, you have the Jewish state of Israel, but it's a small, percentage-wise of the world's population, it's tiny. So it has to be more. They're not like this powerful nation that is a global power. They're not like China, not like the United States, not like Russia, but yet they elicit so much hatred. So that should be a clue right there that there's more to this than meets the eye.
Well, and it's like what Jesus said, if you were of the world, then the world would love you, but you're not. And it's the same for the Jewish people, because they represent God. And yes, there are differences in the Jewish faith and
Right.
Christian faith,
Right.
of course, but the principle is the same. If it weren't for the Jewish people, we would not have a Messiah.
Right.
We would not have Jesus.
Or a Bible.
Or a Bible, right? And so we, give honor where honor's due, and we need to support the Jewish people, pray for them, but also recognize that this is a spiritual battle, and the enemy, if you believe in that, there is a spiritual enemy who wants to stomp out anything that has to do with God.
Very quickly, about 30 seconds left, Dr. Bauwens. How should we be responding to what is happening on these university campuses with that understanding? You said this is not the end of it. This should be a warning sign.
Yeah, it should be a warning sign, but it should also be great hope, because where people who've been forgiven much will love much. And I believe that God is going to rock our campuses in a very good way. And so pray for our universities. If you feel led to start groups there, preach the gospel there. The harvest is ripe. And we have a real opportunity with this generation to see many come to the Lord.
So we should see this not as something that should repel us from these university campuses, but rather should draw us to meet the need that is being evidenced in the lives of these young people.
Run into the fire.
Yeah.